Ever wonder how our world got so connected? This whole global economy thing we live in. Well, it didn't just happen. There was a big bang, a revolution, really. And we're going to dig into it right here. We're talking about the 19th century, the time that basically laid all the groundwork, the wiring for the world we know today. And it all kicks off with this one kind of wild question. How could a simple dinner in London possibly set off a chain reaction that would completely redraw the map, move millions of people, and create a truly global economy? Sounds crazy, right? Okay, let's get into it. To figure this out, we have to go back, way back to the early 1800s. The world was on the brink of a massive, massive change. So here's the problem Britain was dealing with. You've got the Industrial Revolution kicking into high gear, cities are just exploding with people, and all of a sudden, there are way more mouths to feed. The country was literally growing faster than its farms could keep up. For a while, the government had these corn laws to protect local farmers, making it super expensive to import grain. But the cities and factories kept growing, the pressure was on, and finally they got rid of the laws. And that one decision, it was like flipping a giant switch. All of a sudden, it was actually cheaper to get food from the other side of the world than to grow it just down the road. So how do you even begin to wrap your head around a change that big? Well, economists have broken it down for us. They talk about three huge interconnected movements, or flows, that pretty much define this whole new era. And if you get these three flows, you get everything that happened next. And here they are. Simple, right? First, you've got the flow of trade. That's all the stuff, the goods. Second is the flow of labor, which is, people. And third, the flow of capital, the money that makes it all happen. The key thing to remember is that these weren't separate. They were all tangled up together. You couldn't have one without the other two. So let's start with trade. Once those corn laws were gone, food just started pouring into Britain. We're talking from America, Australia, Russia, you name it. But you can't just teleport grain across the ocean, right? This huge movement of food meant a whole new global infrastructure had to be built. Railways to get the crops to the coast, and brand new harbors to handle all the ships. And to work all those new farms and build all those new railways, you need people. A lot of people. It's a staggering number, really. Around 50 million Europeans packed up and left their homes during this time. And that brings us right to our second flow, labor, or people. See, as all this cheap food came in from overseas, a lot of British farms just couldn't compete. Fields went empty and farm workers lost their jobs. So what did they do? They moved. Millions of them migrated to places like America and Australia to work the very land that was now feeding their homeland. Which leads us to the last piece of the puzzle, capital. I mean, all these railways and farms and harbors cost a fortune. So where did the money come from? It flowed out of the world's financial center at the time, London. British investors were pouring money into these projects all over the world. That capital was the engine for this entire global expansion. Now, you have to understand, these massive flows of goods, people, and money, they just wouldn't have been possible without some seriously game-changing technology. In a way, technology was making the planet fuel a whole lot smaller. Just think about this for a second. Shipping grain is one thing. It can last a long trip. But fresh meat? No way. For the longest time, the only way to get it across the ocean was to ship live animals, which was super expensive and just didn't work on a big scale. Meat from America or Australia would be rotten long before it ever hit a plate in Europe. The solution was an absolute marvel of its time, the refrigerated ship. I mean, this one invention didn't just change trade. It was about to change what millions of people ate for dinner every night. And you can just see the dominoes fall here. With refrigerated ships, animals could be slaughtered where they were raised, in America, in Australia, and then the frozen meat could be shipped. This absolutely cratered the cost of transport, which meant meat prices in Britain dropped like a rock. And for the first time, a lot of poor families could actually afford to eat meat, which was huge for their health. But, and this is a huge but, this new, connected world had a very, very dark side. For huge parts of the globe, this wasn't an age of amazing opportunity. It was an age of conquest, of exploitation, and of absolute catastrophe. Take a look at what happened in Africa. In the late 1880s, this terrible disease called rinderpest, a plague that hits cattle, just tore across the continent. And how did it get there? on infected cattle that were imported from British Asia, a totally tragic side effect of this new global network. This chain of events here is just devastating. The plague killed up to 90% of the cattle in some areas. That wasn't just losing livestock, it was wiping out the entire wealth and way of life for many African societies. And the European colonial powers, who were already trying to carve up the continent, they jumped on this chaos. With their economies destroyed, many Africans had no choice but to work for wages on European terms. It let the colonizers grab land and really lock down their control over Africa. Yeah, it became obvious really fast that this new global system wasn't a level playing field. Not at all. It was a hierarchy, and it was built from the ground up to benefit the colonial powers, creating these imbalances of wealth that we're still seeing today. Remember that flow of labor we talked about? Well, it wasn't always people choosing to migrate for a better life. Millions of workers from India and China were moved around the world as indentured laborers. Basically, it was a contract system that bound them to an employer for years, often in horrible conditions on plantations or building railways thousands of miles from home. The conditions were so bad that a lot of people at the time called it exactly what you see here, a new system of slavery. Now, it wasn't technically the same as chattel slavery, but for the people in it, it meant a total loss of freedom, and it was defined by just brutal, back-breaking work. And you see this same unbalanced relationship in the flow of trade. Just look at what happened to India. At the start of the 19th century, India was a manufacturing powerhouse, famous for its amazing cotton textiles. But by the end of the century, Britain had systematically taken apart that industry to eliminate the competition for its own factories. India was transformed into a supplier of raw materials, like raw cotton for Britain to use. And what does that all add up to? Britain created a huge trade surplus with India. What that means is they were selling their expensive, finished goods to India while buying cheap raw materials from India. It was totally a one-way street, designed to make Britain rich, and it locked India into an economic disadvantage that would last for generations. So, after this whole journey through trade, technology, and conquest, what's the big takeaway? Well, the fact is, the blueprint for our modern global economy, with all of its inequalities baked right in, was drawn up back in the 19th century. Those three flows, goods, people, and money, they are what wired our world. But it wasn't a neutral connection. The whole system was built with a bias, creating these clear channels for wealth to flow out of colonized places and into the hands of colonial powers. And those channels, they didn't just disappear. Over time, they hardened. They became the foundation for the economic divides we still live with, the gap between the developed and the developing world. So the question to leave you with is this. When you look at our world today, can you still hear the echoes of that original unbalanced wiring?
To watch more interesting videos like this, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video as widely as possible. Thank you.